Welcome back.
Yes, good to see you. In person this week.
You should be saying welcome back, since I'm the one who returned.
Exactly. Today we're thinking about what is Christian nationalism.
Which is a really big topic. We're going to try not to go too long.
We may end up having to do this over multiple sessions.
Yeah. There's a lot to cover.
Right. So before we get into the kind of subject of Christian nationalism itself, it would probably be helpful for folks to know a little bit about our own backgrounds.
Yes.
So we're both members of the church.
We were both raised in the church.
Mm-hmm. From childhood
yes.
through
infancy.
Yeah.
But very different churches.
Yes. So my background here in the UK, and although I grew up in England, in Kent, I grew up going to a Church of Scotland congregation in the middle of London. Almost an immigrant community of lots of Scots who had moved down to work in London, and they would meet for worship there. And I didn't realise it at the time because it just was church that we just went to. And I should say that my father was the organist there, and my mum later became an elder.
So
was
you were there
ordained as an
all
elder.
the time.
So yeah, we were absolutely in the part of the walls, the bricks.
Yes, I remember when I first came over at Christmas, and we were there for the Christmas service, and then we stayed for the Christmas meal afterwards, and then there was Christmas entertainment afterwards, and we didn't get back to your house until 6 o'clock at night to open family presents. And I just remember being, oh my goodness.
This is
weird. This is weird. I mean, we were at church a lot, but Christmas, unless it falls on a Sunday, you don't go. I mean, and if it falls on a Sunday, you have the normal service and you go, and then you go back home. But otherwise you don't go. So it was, you were there a lot.
A lot, yes. And so what I didn't really realised growing up through the church
that people like me existed.
Well, I mean, there were interesting people in the congregation. It was a mix of different people.
Careful there.
But yes, in general, the kind of the theology of the flavour of theology would have been open and more progressive,
yes,
liberal in that sense of openness to others.
Well, what I remember is when we were down at St. Columba's, which is your home church, for something after you'd been licensed to preach, you right? And I remember talking, and I can't remember who it was, but they were saying to me, I just knew that Peter was going to grow up to be a minister because I had him in Sunday school. And when we had the story of Noah's Ark, he'd drawn a big boat of Noah, the ark, and then there were all of these little lifeboats around. And I asked him what that was about.
Well, he didn't know. No, there were just other boats.
Other boats around, yes, other boats.
Yeah.
And when I asked him, you said it. That's for all the people who couldn't get on the ark.
That's the RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Institution.
And he was so pleased at that. And I don't actually remember. I think I was in the middle, maybe in the middle of a lot of deconstruction at that point. I think maybe I'd come through it. I can't remember. That was so long ago, but it would have been shocking to me at one point in my Christian life.
I still use that story quite often as a sort of explainer of my outlook on faith and life.
Which is
that
just
God
lovely,
loves
actually.
Everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, when I was doing my first degree, which was in sciences, biology, I did go along to the Christian Union and things like that. And so had a kind of experience there of a more evangelical side of the church and more charismatic side. And yeah, it felt pretty alien when you weren't used to that, and kind of, ooh, this is a whole world that I wasn't fully kind of aware of.
Although my background's not charismatic.
No.
So my mom would have been not very uncomfortable with the charismatic movement. So we didn't go to charismatic churches, but conservative evangelical churches.
Yeah. And I think probably round about that time, I would have been reading some parts specifically because of going to some of these more evangelical churches. I went along to All Souls Langham Place, which is a huge, big kind of evangelical centre.
Yes, and you took me there. It was one of the things that at that point in my life kind of reassured me that you maybe weren't too far off the liberal deep end for me.
Yeah, cunning ploy. And then to Holy Trinity Brompton as well, which is where the big kind of Alpha course thing comes from, which was just nearby St Columba's. It's only a 5-minute walk away in Knightsbridge kind of area. So I think I did a bit of reading then about specifically kind of around creation stories and this is the kind of biology.
We're doing a biology degree at the time. Yeah,
so there was just a kind of natural resonance there. And it was where we met at a camp in the United States.
Right, so it was an American Baptist camp.
Yeah.
For children. Summer camps are big in the States because parents don't get much time off and kids have 3 months off, so they need somewhere to go. So for kids and then also for adults with kind of learning disabilities. And you were doing the music there and I was running one of the camps for adults with learning disabilities.
Yeah, and as part of that, quite a lot of you were kind of more, in your own areas with some of the adults, whereas with the kind of the bulk of the staff that were working with all the children that were there, we would gather for our meals in the big kind of dining hall that was there, and that often ended up in some quite heated discussions around topics of evolution. There was one other girl whose name I can't remember now.
But she was pre-med,
she was doing a pre-med course, so the kind of course before going into medicine. And it was just the two of us kind of trying to explain to a whole table full of folks how evolution works. And
being met with incredulity.
It really did blow my mind. Just wow, I had not fully comprehended how.
So it's possibly good for our kids that I wasn't at those conversations, because at that point
that would have scared you away.
No, well, and maybe possibly my position would have scared you away, vice versa, because certainly. I was raised that on the Genesis flood is why we have all the fossils, and it's what carved out the Grand Canyon, and the Earth was created 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, give or take, and that certainly was my background.
What's this guy's name? Henry Morris, is it? Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where that sort of journey I'd been on to the point at which we kind of met. So that whole experience was a real eye-opener to me of a different side of... Now, obviously, there are evangelical churches in the United Kingdom and all that, but I think there was just so many people there who had this kind of literalist sense of the Bible, which that just had never been part of my growing up, and part of especially as a teenager and into early 20s, after the evening services, because we used to go to the morning service, stay there for the whole day, and because we lived 20 odd miles away, so it was a trek to get in, was going to the pub after the evening service, and there'd be a whole group of 20 odd people, including whoever had preached, would usually come along, and you'd end up having a whole discussion about dissecting the sermon and what was meant by that and all that kind of thing. So it was
that was not part of my church experience.
Yeah, very discursive kind of sense to it, and that it was so I kind of grew up with this idea of trying to tease things apart and asking the difficult questions and trying to get at the heart of things. So it came as quite an eye-opener to find a kind of like a wall of at which it's almost impossible to penetrate.
And you're really taught not to, and you're just supposed to accept by faith, and you're supposed to have the faith of a child. You're not really supposed to question. I mean, I have this really vivid memory of driving home. I was a teenager. I don't know what I was coming home from, but I remember thinking, wow, I know some people doubt their faith and they have questions about it, but I'm just so thankful that I don't have any doubts and I don't have any questions. I just look back at that now and think, oh my goodness, But that was what was valued in my faith community, right? Because it was the authority of Scripture, which was infallible, inerrant. We really didn't address the fact that so many people interpreted it differently because we were right, conveniently enough. And you had to believe, it was really, faith was about believing the right thing about Jesus. And you wanted to be kind to people and loving and generous and all of these things, the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, right? Faithfulness, self-control, all of these things. And you wanted to do, but really becoming a Christian was about believing the right thing about Jesus. You had to say the sinner's prayer, ask Jesus into your heart, and then you were safe and you were going to go to heaven and you weren't going to go to hell. And I just grew up, I'm an oldest daughter, so I was a huge people pleaser and I followed all the rules. It's kind of bizarre that I've ended up as a liberal. I think my whole family blames you for that. Or not my whole family, but, bits of the family that are still, it is, because I think for myself.
Indeed.
At least I'd like to think I think for myself. But yes, you don't question, and I didn't, right? I didn't, and I was all in. Yeah. I think my parents did want me to go to a Christian college, university. I didn't want to. I wanted to go, so I ended up going to William & Mary. But when I was at William & Mary, which is an American university in Virginia, when I was at William & Mary, I got involved with InterVarsity, which is conservative, evangelical, right? So even though I wasn't at a Christian college, Christian university, I certainly was very into, that whole kind of setting, and I stayed within that setting. I remember going church hunting when I got there, was going to go to church. The churches around the campus within walking distance, none of them were really hitting the spot. I do remember going to one, sitting next to a couple, would say older, they were probably our age now, and they were really friendly, really lovely, and I can't remember what exactly they said, but there was something about social justice. And I remember, this isn't really for me, because I kind of been taught that social justice is a social gospel and it's not the real gospel. It's not what's going to get people saved and save people from heaven. And I bought into all of that fear. That's what I was going to say. Or I just remember growing up with that sinner's prayer. I prayed it repeatedly. Because you had to pray the sinner's prayer and really mean it in your heart, and then you'll be saved. Well, did I really mean it? Maybe I didn't really mean it. What does it mean to, right? And so I really ruminated on all of that. And I prayed it over and please, God, I hope I really meant it this time. I think I really meant it. Only you know if I really meant it, kind of thing. I do remember coming home a couple of times from school and no one was home when I expected them to be home. And of course, my immediate thought was, the rapture has happened and I didn't really mean it. I'd been left behind. Which you kind of need to explain in these kind of...
we don't have time today, but
but just really quickly, it's this belief that Jesus is going to come back and he's going to take all of the Christians out of the world. They're all just going to disappear, and then everyone else is going to be left for a 7-year great tribulation, really a horrible time. But the Christians are going to be miraculously removed from that. And I was raised with that kind of idea. This is
a very particular strand of theology, which is, there are proponents of that who would clearly be Christian nationalists, but Christian nationalism is more than just that. But there was the whole Tim LaHaye, the Left Behind series of books, and there were 5 films, I think.
I remember going to see Thief in the Night.
Yeah, that's from the 70s.
Yes, and so I would have been young. I mean, when I think about I would have been maybe 9 or 10, and I'm fairly certain that the main character has her head cut off at the end. Right? It's pretty
cheery stuff,
graphic stuff. But the version of Christianity that I grew up in is fear-based religion. We get people afraid of hell, afraid of being outside of the in-group, right? And so when we think about what we were talking about before, about height, the kind of basis of morality, the different moral foundations we have, and conservatives rely heavily on purity, authority, and loyalty, and you push those buttons by getting people to be afraid. And I can see that in the way that I grew up, right? I have to obey authority because I'm afraid of going to hell if I don't. You've got to be loyal to your in-group. You need to be pure. You have to believe exactly the right thing, because if you don't, you're going to go to hell.
And some
I can see it now.
Yeah, so I'm a minister in the Church of Scotland now, having come all this way, haven't really gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And there have been times over the years where folks have said, we should have a bit more of that hellfire and brimstone. And, not many, but a few folks have said that over, actually, not recently, but maybe 20 years ago, and so you realize that it is actually that whole fear, having a message of fear in some weird way is what people are expecting, or even find kind of comforting or
and
something because of the identity that you have with it.
Yes, and it's something that creates a group. And I think, we mentioned the high right-wing authoritarians, that the kind of RWA scale, the right-wing authoritarian scale. And all of the research that Altmaier did.
Bob Altmaier,
that he did looking at people who scored very highly on the high right-wing authoritarian scale. One of the consistent characteristics is they desperately want to be part of a group, and they do not want to step out of that group, and they don't want to be too different from their group. They want to be the same as their group, right? So there is this in certain people, there is this need to be a part of a group, and they're naturally more afraid of people outside of their group. So I think that's I think in the States. the conservative evangelical church would be a magnet for people who are high right-wing authoritarian kind of people, which, we kind of see that playing out. And Christian nationalism is a part of that ideology that then I think, pulls people together as a group, pushes some people on the outside of that group. The group identity is really, really important. I mean, we kind of create our own identity a lot out of the different groups that we're a part of, right? Yeah. And that is more important to some people than others, just because of their kind of constitutional makeup. But certainly, I mean, I felt it, and when I went away to uni, I was right in with the group that I had, the same kind of people that I had grown up with and that I believed, right, where this was the right version of Christianity. And I mean, I just cringe. But I mean, I remember having to apologize at one point to a Catholic friend of mine. And I can't remember what I'd said, but certainly it was definitely implying that she wasn't a Christian and wanting I needed to save her. And I mean, it's embarrassing now when I think back. She was very gracious at the time, but your version of Christianity is the only version of Christianity. You have the corner on the market of God's truth. And so you better hang on to that, because the consequences are pretty dire if you don't. But that whole idea is part of what gives really a lot of power behind the idea of Christian nationalism. Because if or a certain subset of Christian nationalism anyway, if you know what God wants, it's legitimate for you to impose that on other people, because you know what God wants. I mean, that's getting into... Yeah. And I know that Christian nationalism is wider than just one subset of
We may
people.
come to that, indeed. Yeah. Right. So...
Anyway, then we met.
Yeah.
And that kind of threw a lot of things into...
Yes. But that maybe gives a little bit of background for anyone watching our blithering, that we actually were coming from very different positions. Yeah. And your experience, you would have more kind of direct experience of things that might tally with a kind of Christian nationalist than I do. So I'm coming as a pair of eyes almost from the outsider that's looking on and
I would have
looking quizzically.
And I would have been raised with those kind of
right in there.
Yeah, nothing as it. I mean, everything feels much more extreme now. And I wasn't raised, I didn't feel like I was being raised with as extreme as things are now. But certainly, well, we'll get into it, but a lot of these Christian nationalist ideas that have been fomenting from the 50s have made its way into mainstream conservative evangelicalism in the States, and I recognize them. So it's been something I've been interested in for quite a while, and a little bit scared about for quite a while, because I recognize the themes, even though I wasn't homeschooled. We went to public school. There are huge numbers of folks that are rarely getting outside of a kind of bubble. Their and that's
kids
intentional.
are homeschooled. Yes, entirely intentional of not having any influences from outside that bubble affecting them, and maybe encouraging folks to think about because that's...
Well, that's how I changed, isn't it? I mean,
that's thinking about things.
Well, it doesn't start there, right? It starts with meeting people who you were told were not really Christians, and then spending time with them and realizing, why was I told they weren't Christians, right? Of course, because that was my experience coming over here, and my first couple of years over here after we got married were very traumatic. And I know the term now that's used is deconstruction. I didn't really have a term for it back then, because this was in the mid-90s. But we came, and you were doing a a placement for your divinity degree with the church out in Inverary. And I do remember going, and there was just a service on a Sunday morning. There wasn't any Sunday school. There weren't, very many evening
this is
services.
American Sunday school.
American Sunday school, where everyone would go to American Sunday school.
Adults.
Everyone would have their own classes, and then you would come together and you would go to the service, and then you would come back in the evening, and you probably would come back on a Wednesday. And there wasn't really any of that. Occasional evening services, but it wasn't every week, just the Sunday morning service. And I definitely remember thinking, oh yeah, these people, they're not really, committed the way my church is. But then, of course, we came and we're still very good friends with the minister and his wife. I mean, just the loveliest people, so welcoming, really helped me feel at home. They were so kind to us. And then getting involved in the church, and everyone else was similarly kind. And then, of course, there was the whole Jubilee 2000 movement, where this awareness of all of the debt that was being held over people in developing countries, and this huge movement in the churches to get that debt canceled, because we were, these people had paid back in interest way more than they'd ever been loaned. And then they didn't, because they still had these onerous interest payments to Western the Western countries. They couldn't fund education for their populace. They couldn't fund healthcare. We were keeping them in destitution, something I'd never heard about in any of my churches that I'd been to. It just wasn't, I'd been taught to be skeptical of social justice.
Yeah.
So, and I saw Jesus in these people I'd been told probably weren't Christians. And I just started, it kind of blew my mind. And then I just started thinking, what is this? And I remember having this feeling and thinking, I'm starting to realize I didn't really believe what I'd been taught, right? I was my viewpoint on Christianity was changing. And I remember thinking, if I don't believe this, who even am I? It was an identity thing, right? You are taught and that your identity is as a Christian. And it's a specific kind of Christian, a Christian who said the sinner's prayer and who believes the Bible's infallible and who is going to witness to other people and try to save them, and who, and it went along with as well believing that abortion was wrong and believing that homosexuality was wrong, and those things were tied into it as well.
And there was no role for women within the church other than looking after children.
Yes, you could teach children, you could teach other women.
Or maybe folks with darker skin if abroad.
If there was no man available to do it. Well, and I think that issue also was something that helped me in my journey out of conservative evangelicalism, because I remember at the camp, there was one night where, and I had been there for that conversation. It was in the director's office, and there was a big conversation about the role of women in the church. And you had been saying, I don't think that the Bible restricts women, and certainly in marriage, I think it's an equal partnership, and women should be, the church I come from, women all...
Things I've regretted saying.
Fair enough. And I remember thinking, you'd been hanging around, where I worked for a while at that point. So I was quite interested in what you thought. And I do remember thinking, I don't believe that. He's got that all wrong. So after we had decided to date and you'd gone back, and I was going to be coming over at Christmas time, so we kind of traveled around at the end of the summer. I went back to my home church, the church I was going to in Connecticut, and I thought, I'm going to research this, and I'll prove him wrong. And of course...
This is always a very good basis for a relationship.
I wanted to change you, but of course I ended up changing myself. Because then when I checked books out of the church library, I realized, oh my goodness, the Bible does not say about women what I was always taught that it said. And I was very naive. I thought, oh, my family's going to be thrilled with this, right? We're
good news.
Yeah, and we're telling women they can't do things that, of course, they can do, and this is not. Woo! No,
they were not so excited.
That was not the response that I got. It was, and I remember it distinctly. You are being deceived by the spirit of this world, and I felt like, come on. You raised me. I know that means I'm being deceived by Satan. Come out and say it. But that's not an argument. You're just trying to shut down conversation. You don't want to talk about it. So that experience combined with the experience I was having with a different kind of Christian who I'd always been told weren't really Christians, the cognitive dissonance was massive. And it was really, I have a lot of sympathy for people who it is really hard to deconstruct what you have been taught by people you love and who genuinely love you, right? And to come to the realization that what you were taught wasn't true, and what you based your whole identity on wasn't true. And it was a lot easier. It was horrendously difficult, but it was a lot easier for me because I was doing it here in a different kind of group. I wasn't. So you can imagine how hard it is if you are in a community where everyone believes the same thing and you don't really know anyone outside that community, or if you do, you're taught to be skeptical of them because they're of the world and you don't want to be deceived by the spirit of this world, right? Which is code for Satan. It's really hard. The fear is used to keep you in the group. And I think that's...
And we've seen that with other friends that we have when they have made they've had a change in their own viewpoint to some issue, whether it's LGBT or whatever it might be, and how they are then excluded from the group which they had been a part of.
Yes.
And it's been an entirely legitimate journey that they've been on. And yet, once you break from that, that's it. You're excluded.
Yeah. And we used to joke.
Painful.
We used to joke with one friend that we're your liberal friends and we'll love you anyway, right? When we were on different sides of some of these issues, and then when that friend came on this journey, they did find that their conservative evangelical colleagues wanted nothing to do with them any longer. Yeah. We didn't want to go to do pulpit exchanges with their church. And so, and that is like purity, right? You can see Haidt's moral foundations, and you can see... when
we say Haidt, for those who might be... It's Jonathan Haidt, who wrote a book, The Righteous Mind, which we were talking about in the episode 2.
Yeah. Yes, and there's a lot to go into there, and I apologize. It's spelled with an AI, so I want to say hate, even though I think he pronounces it Haidt. Anyway, it's a really hard thing to come out of, and there's a group. Someone coined the term ex-evangelical. There are a lot of people like me who have come out of conservative evangelicalism, but it's not an easy thing to do, and there is a lot of kind of emotional anguish, and it's pretty traumatic. And for me, it was a couple of years journey. And then and then once I'd made that change, and I'd realized you kind of let go of these belief systems, it became easier to change on other things. Like I remember, so of course I was obviously raised that being LGBT was wrong. I mean, it wasn't really talked about that much, but certainly you knew it was wrong. And I remember you coming home with an essay that you'd written. You'd been assigned an essay on what did the Bible say about homosexuality, and you'd you'd gotten it back and you let me read it. And of course, you'd concluded back in 96 or something that the Bible doesn't condemn homosexuality. You were ahead of your time. And I remember reading, and I don't remember if you remember me saying this, but I just said, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I didn't argue it with you. I think I'd had the experience of realizing my position was wrong, but I was pretty skeptical. But then one day when I was not working and you were at uni, on your shelf you had a book. It was a John Stott book about 100 questions Christians ask, and so with your essay rattling around in the back of my head, I'd picked it up, and it did have a chapter on homosexuality. And of course, it goes through all the clobber passages, shows how you can read them. When you read them...
a clobber passage is... there are a handful of verses in the Bible that are generally used as the kind of proof text
to condemn
homosexuality.
Yeah. And we call them clobber passages because they're used to beat people over the head with, right?
Yeah. And if you look at the passages kind of in their cultural setting,
which is what Stott did in this book, and if you look at them all contextually, they're not condemning
what we understand
as homosexuality. They're just not. And I remember, but then he comes at the end of this book. He concludes by saying, but homosexuality is still wrong. And essentially, this is flippant, but essentially because God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And I remember reading that and saying, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, right, if you're reading all these contextually, it clearly doesn't condemn it. And right, so I just thought, okay, that's fine. But then I don't believe that homosexuality is wrong. So this was back in the 90s. But then I definitely didn't want to talk about that because I knew if you came out as affirming and accepting of people who are LGBT, I knew what the consequences of that was going to be. Like it was, when I was talking to my family about, yes, the Bible doesn't say that men are the boss of everything and that women can't, that was enough of what's up with her? But that was still kind of okay. But I knew if I said, and by the way, I don't think it's wrong to be LGBT, that would have been beyond the pale. Right. And so even though I wasn't in that group anymore, the fear of their reaction to me for my changing ideas was still there and still kept me quiet.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a little bit of where we're coming from, and a bit of background, which leads us into then kind of where we are today
with Christian
nationalism, which is a kind of almost like a catch-all sort of term that is being thrown around a lot at the moment, and so it's it may be worth trying to explore a bit about what it means, what the ramifications of it are, and this is where this is going to take us more than one sitting to do this. Yeah. So we're just going to do a little bit, kind of how you look for Christian nationalism, how it's maybe defined, and then go into a bit more of what the ramifications, maybe some of the history of it, what the ramifications of it are in weeks to come. I've been. We've read quite a few books about Christian nationalism over the years. So yes, it's worth saying that this is not new. No. Christian nationalism has been around for centuries. It is old.
A lot of the ideas in the States, it was in the kind of 40s, 50s with Rushdoony, with some of these foundational... In part, yeah.
But we're not going to do the history right now. I don't think, because that's going to be a whole going to be a bit of time to unpack that.
And you don't really need, I guess, all of that. I think just because of my background in conservative evangelicalism, it was more interesting to me, and because I could see then when I started doing the reading how these ideas, even though my growing up background wasn't kind of overtly Christian nationalist, I could see how these ideas were seeping in. And so I think there's been a lot of seep in, and then things have become more and more radical as we've gone along. Anyway, I think you know more about the kind of definitions of Christian nationalism and different groups that would consider themselves Christian nationalists.
Yeah, and partly because of being raised in a different culture, and I mean, Christian nationalism is not just an American thing. It exists in other countries at the moment. You think about Hungary, that is very much being kind of modelled in that sort of way. And there are elements of it you see in the UK as well. But there's a particularly strong strand of it in the United States, and partly just because of the history of the United States, how it's developed. Some of the negative things that go along with that have shaped the United States.
A lot of the kind of really, the Puritans, I mean, they're your original fundamentalists, aren't they? And they were right and everyone else was wrong. And that they went to the States so that they could form their own communities. For freedom for them and not for people who disagreed with them.
Indeed.
Right? They didn't, And that is another hallmark of people who are high on the right-wing authoritarian scale, is the hypocrisy is off the charts because their authority is right and their Lord, and they're the ones who are pure, right? So and this is part of American history, right? This is a big part of our founding. You know, the kind of colonists who came over and things.
There's the book I'm reading at the moment is called "Taking America Back for God: Christian Nationalism in the United States," and it's Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry are the authors of it. So they've been, and what's kind of interesting about their book is that they've been trying to survey and get some information and kind of statistics about the prevalence of Christian nationalism in the United States, and have done that through a number of kind of big surveys that have gone out, and then they've been going around interviewing people to try and explore the ideas of and where people are coming from. They're kind of in a few words summary of what Christian nationalism is Christianity that's co-opted in the service of ethno-national power.
Right. Okay, so, you're going to unpack that a little bit for me?
Well,
I'm assuming
ethno-national as
white.
as in it's one particular ethnic group that is associated with a nation. So a white America,
of course,
and their power, and then Christianity is being, the stories, the symbology of Christianity is all being used
to legitimate it.
To help a certain group maintain power.
Lovely.
So that's kind of where they're coming at.
Because Jesus was all about power.
Yeah, well, there is something very Old Testament about Christian nationalism in the sense of the being, the blessing of God. I mean, all the language that you kind of, you so much sort of take for granted that for a Brit, it has always sat uneasily. When you're watching American sports or anything like that, which is the language is so suffused with this idea of God blessing America.
God blessing my football team.
There's other people on this planet.
God providing me a parking space.
Yeah, all of this sort of this kind of understanding of things, but that is quite Old Testament idea of if you are in good covenant with God, God will bless you and will heap riches upon you, heap power upon you, all of that kind of thing. There is very little in Christian nationalism that has a New Testament ethic.
I was going to say, because Jesus came to turn all that Old Testament stuff on its head.
It's just nowhere to be seen in it. So it's interesting, that kind of division. I wonder if for the rest of this week, there are 6 different when in the survey that these authors have been using, there are 6 statements that they ask folks to express how strongly they agree with it or disagree with it. It's
on a scale.
Yeah, on a kind of 5-point scale there. Because when I look at these, there are some of them which I'm thinking, I'm more sympathetic. So it's not. Some folks would reject all of these. There are some of them that I can see more, but I think part of that is because of coming from a different cultural setting.
Yes.
And I think that's what's shaping my
because I'm looking at him going,
no.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I kind of think, that's what I should be thinking, but then. It's
a different perspective. Well, we better maybe say what some of them are.
We'll put these up on screen so folks can see what they are, but maybe just go through each of them briefly. We're just, our gut reaction to them.
Right. The federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation. No.
But you hear that. You hear that here in the United Kingdom as well.
It's crazy.
We're a Christian, if you're the Vox Pop kind of thing, we're, especially thinking about immigration, but we're a Christian nation. We're built on Judeo-Christian foundations. So it is clearly something that really motivates a lot of folks.
So yes, historically, right, the UK was Christian. Historically, these European for the last
there's a national church, Church of England, Church of Scotland, kind of. Church of Scotland is a little bit more stepped away than the Church of England is.
I guess what I'm thinking though is the history I did at school was Tudor Stuart, and of course all the back and forth between.
What I mean is the Christian church is a part of the structures of the state.
Yeah, that's true. In a way that it's not in the States.
There isn't a national, mosque. There isn't a national.
No, that's true.
So that's what I was kind of driving at there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think I react against that because I know what people mean by a Christian nation, and they want to impose their idea of Christianity, which is going to include women are subject to their husbands and women do not have positions of authority in the church. And there are plenty of them that don't think women should have positions of authority anywhere.
Anyway, yeah.
LGBT people, back in the closet. Women don't have control over their own bodies, right? All of these things, we are going to teach our version of the Genesis myth as fact. We are going to, right? So I know what they mean by Christian nation, and it isn't historical Christian values of loving others, and it's not. I know what it means.
It's a return to slaveholder religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
of oppression of those who are not part of your in-group or your ethnic group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so the federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation. There's so much baggage that goes along with that if you have any inkling of any of that baggage, you realize, whoa, okay. But that is one of the statements. So those who score highly favorable to that, lots of points for being Christian nationalist. The second one, federal government should advocate Christian values. So this is one of these ones where there's a part of me that's like, well, yeah, if they are the Christian values of compassion
of Jesus.
and caring
Yeah.
and looking out for the least of these.
And I go, no, because I know what the Christian values are. And they're tied up with what I was talking about, with what they mean by a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that what they mean by Christian values is excluding people who don't agree with them and imposing their specific beliefs about roles in society and what kind of people are acceptable in a society and what kind of people are not acceptable in society. I know what their Christian values that they're talking about are not Jesus's whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with that. Or if it is, it's only within their in-group. It's nothing to do with other groups, right? And if you fall outside of their group, well, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
So
you would be well known in your community as a loving, open
Absolutely.
person who would do anything, drop anything to help a neighbor.
Oh, and the churches that I grew up in, if someone has a baby or if there's a death in the family or if there's, some kind of, everyone would rally around. They would set up meal trains and they would make sure that you had food and if you needed childcare. I mean, they would do, but it's their in group and it's not going to go outside of that group unless they think they can convert you. And then maybe, but then if you're not convertible or that's going to run out real fast.
Yeah. So again,
I'm a real cynic. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, this is what I grew up with.
The third one is the federal government should enforce strict separation of church and state. So this is one where so in the scoring of it, it's reverse coded. So the high score is for saying.
Funnily enough, I'm not a Christian nationalist.
I don't think I am.
I suspect you're not. Even if you do have some little.
So this is an interesting one culturally, because of course here. It is in the UK. There isn't so much this separation. So when we have the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland each year, our big kind of annual gathering, there is the Lord High Commissioner who is sent from the King as the King's representative there, who presents a letter and from the King, and there's a kind of
and of course all the bishops and the Church of England are part of the House of Lords.
Well, not all of them, but there are a selection of bishops who are part of the House of Lords.
And
so they are connected into. So there is more, but then
it's a historical artifact, isn't it?
It is a historical artifact, and there are challenges to it at the moment. The level of separation, and it's still, like I'd be a chaplain in a primary school and things like that. So going into a school setting, and that is partly historical because all the schools in Scotland were run by the church up until 1870, wasn't it? Something like that, when the state took over. So there are these kind of historical hangovers. But there is also an understanding of the limitations of, so when it's working well, I should say, because sometimes, and that's again when we got that what we were talking about last week about the sort of norms and institutions and the sort of the kind of guardrails that keep things on the right track. There are quite a lot of those still that are in place here, which kind of help things from overstepping the mark. But it is quite different. I know I've had that conversation with folks in the States who are really surprised that I would go into a school, or we have school groups that come to church for different things. So that we have a end of term service always at the church for the whole school. But within the American setting, it is. I mean, this is part of the Constitution. that
Yeah,
was
the
set
founding
up.
fathers wanted to make sure that they're, and of course you did have a really strong tradition in the States of very prescriptive religious groups who did want to impose their religious viewpoint on other people. And I think the founding fathers wanted to make sure that that didn't happen.
Yeah, so it was a very deliberate
choice
of theirs in order to try and stop some of what we are seeing happening now from happening.
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth one, the federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public spaces. So that is, in the United States, the big thing is the 10 Commandments in courts. Things like that.
Or in schools, like they want it in schools. I'm like, so you really want to be explaining to kids what adultery is, right? Like coveting your husband's or your neighbor's wife kind of thing. I mean, and then talking about murder, thou shalt not kill. It seems a little heavy for primary school. It seems like the golden rule is maybe a better way to go in primary schools. And of course, there are versions of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and kind of all of the major religions. So I guess, I mean, and of course, again, here's the hypocrisy in the States. They want their religious symbols. They do not want other people's religious symbols.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is that it's framed in a neutral kind of way, but
it's not neutral.
It isn't neutral at all. If it was quotes from the Quran,
oh my goodness,
that would be So again, the hypocrisy of it.
The success of the United States is part of God's plan. The hubris.
But then think of, when I was reading that, I was thinking of Manifest Destiny.
Oh, yeah.
So Manifest Destiny was the kind of theology, the understanding that underpinned a lot of the drive to the West and the taking of the Native Americans' land.
I mean,
because God has ordained it. That this
for
land
the
would
white
be taken.
settlers.
And again, this is very Old Testament. This is chosen land that you're being granted. And
so there's that famous picture of all of these white settlers in their kind of covered wagons heading out west with this massive kind of lady dressed in white who's clearly this image of like an angel or something, like leading them forward. There was something, I would have to look it up. There was something to do with the Trump administration and that picture. Because it is
Was it Melania? Did they put Melania in that role?
No. I think one of the agencies posted that picture, and it really is this picture about white Americans taking from native brown Americans.
First Americans.
Right. The original inhabitants of the land. And it's very, anyway.
First Nation, I should say, isn't it? First Nation.
I mean, that's the Canadian term, I think.
Yeah, is that what they use in Canada?
In Canada.
Yeah, right.
But
it is, It's
but this success is white success.
Exactly. It's God's plan is for a particular group to have power and control over everyone else.
Which is why Jesus is always white Jesus.
Indeed.
Right. We have nice pictures, lots of pictures of nice white Jesus.
And then the last one they have was the federal government should allow prayer in public schools, which is a hot button topic. In the United States. So these statements being statements that they've crafted because they are going to be identifiers for folks, for Christian nationalism.
And of course for me, I guess I definitely don't think that we should be, because if you're praying publicly, you are praying in the States, it's going to be conservative evangelical, and it's not going to have any care or any kind of deference to the fact that there might be people in the audience who are Jewish or who are atheist or who are Muslim, who are Sikh, who are Buddhist, who are whatever. And they're going to feel very justified in imposing their version of prayer on everybody else. But they would scream bloody murder if anyone who they didn't agree with was giving the prayer and was praying to Allah or whatever. So I guess it's all of these things. It's the hypocrisy for me that, I mean, certainly there are groups in schools, like, you know, so you might have a group that kids would choose to go along to. It might be a scripture union group or, you know, a Bible study group. And if that's okay on the group grounds, then if you choose to go and you want to pray there, then I wouldn't have a problem with that, because people are self-selecting to go. But it's just when it's imposed, a certain religious viewpoint is imposed by the authorities. You know, I mean, I certainly, as a teacher, when I've taught religions, I mean, I have been asked before, what do you believe? And as the teacher, as the authority in the kids' eyes, I don't say what I believe. When I'm teaching about Christianity, or I mean, sometimes they can guess. One kid told me once, "You know an awful lot about Christianity," but I still don't feel like if I'm the authority and I'm teaching about the religions, I'm just saying this is what Christians believe, this is what Sikhs believe, this is what Muslims believe, whatever religion I'm teaching about. And some people don't believe anything about God, right? So, I'm, you know, if we're doing a service at the, so this is where it's different here in the United Kingdom. I mean, usually would have a prayer as part of it, but it's very much framed in I'm going to say a prayer here. Please listen to the words. If you feel like you want to, if you agree with those words, then you could say Amen at the end or whatever. But it's not. Yeah, you're trying not to impose it. You're offering it into the space, that kind of care of the. Yeah, that's never going to happen.
No, that's not what this is talking about at all.
That's never going to happen in a conservative evangelical setting, or where a conservative evangelical viewpoint in the States is being expressed. It is not an option, right? Really.
So those are those 6 statements that the authors have used, and so they score them. And then on using the different scores that they have there, they kind of put folks on a kind of scale. And it's interesting because you get I was telling you this, you get this spike of folks who say no to everything. No, they have the lowest,
the lowest
0
possible.
score.
So you say yes.
Because one of them is kind of reverse coded. And then it's like a bell curve.
Wow.
For the rest, which is quite interesting. But one of the things, so it's the direct connect. So we've talked quite a lot about the evangelical church and kind of white evangelicalism. But there will, so they kind of classify, and they take the scoring and then they kind of break it into 4 kind of classifications. So you have those who are the ambassadors, gung-ho for Christian nationalism. Those who are accommodators, so they have kind of questions, but they lean towards that
viewpoint.
Yeah, resistors who also a bit hesitant, but they would maybe, I see some of these as being
are not so
good,
great.
Or
resistors, I'm assuming.
Yes, they would lean away from it, but they would still have a score where some things they would kind of
say, okay, I can go with that.
And then you have the rejectors, so the ones that are more at the far end of that bell curve of saying no to it. And you will find white evangelicals who are rejectors.
Which is an interesting thing.
Now, of course, there are far more who are the ambassadors or the accommodators there. But you do find the kind of cross-section. So it isn't just as clear. And then what they found in kind of looking at the research, that particularly thinking about Trump and those who have voted for Trump, that they are, the number one kind of identifier or that fits with somebody who voted for Trump is they're Republican.
Yes.
They're a member of the Republicans.
Yeah.
Second one was they were politically conservative.
Although
Third
he's
one
not really conservative, is he?
was Islamophobia. And then
That
the fourth
tracks.
one was Christian nationalism.
That all tracks.
So those the four kind of top things. So then that would be kind of ahead of some of the other things that you might kind of associate with it. So it's worth just keeping that in mind that Christian nationalism is broader than just saying somebody is and there are folks who are from Black Protestant churches who would come out as ambassadors for Christian nationalism. Small group, but they're there. So yeah, worth keeping that in mind. Now, what Christian nationalism is, I think we should leave that.
Yes.
Because we've covered a lot of ground
here
tonight. So just as we finishing things up, a couple of things that we're bringing ourselves, and you were wanting to bring up.
Dexter, right? The
TV show?
The TV show, yeah. We watched it back when the original however many series came out. And then at the end of that series, Dexter goes off to start a new life as a different person, takes on a new identity. So we've just finished watching Dexter New Blood. And then we finished that, and we've just watched Dexter Resurrection. Started that one. So we haven't finished that. So I was just wanting to not any spoilers really in case people, although a lot of people have seen it, and these came out a while ago.
2005 or something.
Oh, really?
I think it's about 20 years. The original series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a long time ago.
Even the new ones aren't that new, are they?
The new series we're on is coming out at the moment.
Okay. It was more just to think about the popularity of Dexter in terms, like, why is it so popular and why do we, and I think it's interesting the way I feel about, like, I remember watching the first series and it's fascinating and you're rooting for the serial killer in it. And I find that deeply uncomfortable. Of course, he's a serial killer with a heart because he kills other serial killers.
Kind of,
right? Like that's how this vigilante justice, and you see that in the most recent series that we watched, where he's talking about, yes, we kill people, but it's good because we're saving all of these other people. There's this rationalization in it. So anyway, I was just thinking of it in terms of like, so as someone who values care and not harming people.
Yes, I'm wondering where this is going.
How do you, and I think it is that rationalization, is that you're thinking of all of the people that these serial killers would have killed. And he is stopping that. Of course, you think, can we let the police do it, right? So, I mean, there is, in the latest one, he gets this clue and he figures out immediately who the serial killer is. And of course, he's going to take care of it himself and not go to the police. So there's...
Vigilante justice.
Yes, it is the vigilante justice. But I think if you're a liberal, you're going to be more drawn to this idea that think of all the people he's saving. Of course, then there's so much collateral damage with him as well, which these series do kind of talk about a fair amount. But then I think on the other side, the whole idea of vigilante justice and an authority that's going to make sure that someone doesn't get away with murder is also right there's a way that this
is
series
the American in you coming out completely.
Well, I think that the way that I think the series has found a way to appeal to people who are liberal and conservative. I think somehow you can, because you're definitely meant to sympathize with Dexter, right? And not want him to get away with things. You're meant to.
I'm sure that's what you're meant to.
Is that
I'm
not
not entirely sure how I see it that way.
I know it's a really interesting. Anyway, I think that there are, the character of Dexter, the way they frame him, can be made to appeal to people across the political spectrum and in different ways, I think. Anyway, I just thought it was a wee interesting, and I always feel I never like it when he gets to the point where he's going to kill somebody. I just think, oh, do you have to do that? Is there another way you could do that? But then once he's done it, I think, I don't want you to get caught. I don't know. And then I feel very conflicted about it all.
I think I watched this through a different lens.
So maybe anyway, I always feel very conflicted about the whole thing. And then when you see all of the collateral, and there's huge amounts of collateral damage, it's really a horrible way to live, clearly. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I find it uncomfortable.
I mean,
My own visceral reaction, I find really uncomfortable.
Sure. Good. I'm glad.
And then I wonder, and then I start getting in my head, why? What?
Yeah.
How? Why? Why do you kind of root for the serial killer? You don't want him to get caught. You don't want him. You want him to stop killing. You want him, and they do try to humanize him. They definitely try to humanize him, with his relationship with Deb, and then his relationship with Rita, and then his relationship with his son. And
I think that's where the books are a little bit different, because we've read quite a few of the books over the years. The books
don't try to humanize him so much.
It's
almost like it's almost like he's demon possessed in the books, I think.
Yeah.
There is
there's another voice speaking to him,
that seems to Anyway, that's all. It was just it was just thinking about it in terms of the kind of moral foundations that we've been thinking about, and how you have this really very dangerous, very evil character that is made to appeal to, I think the goal is to have you kind of halfway rooting for him,
Yep.
Anyway,
I think that's true.
That's it.
That is what they're trying to do.
Doesn't work on you.
Well,
But the story ends if he gets caught and goes to prison.
And you've got to make money by another series coming.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. I don't know. There's partly it's. I mean, it's a bit like the was it Tom Harris? The Lecter, Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. Oh, but he's
but what I mean is
they never try to make you root for him.
Not in the films, but in the books, you're kind of in his. You're getting into the mind of somebody whose vision of the world is so very different to your own, and that's what I kind of find interesting and fascinating about it.
Yes, and I've read those books, and I've never rooted for Hannibal Lecter. They paint him differently. Don't they?
I'm not saying you're rooting, but it's more it's that trying to understand where, and that's kind of out of the Dexter. That's more of what I think I kind of
take out of it.
This is such a weird way to be seeing the world and be understanding the world. And
it's because he's so deeply damaged.
He's a damaged person,
so damaged,
and has been given the kind of structure in which to try to understand his place in the world. But
to try to, I mean, obviously his dad didn't think he could. The damage was too deep, and that it couldn't be cured. So he had to find a constructive way to channel his murderous impulses. So he tries to, he makes him, he can only kill other killers who are going to get away with it, kind of thing. I mean, he's clearly so damaged. Anyway, that's all.
Okay. So I wanted to bring up, this is a carry-on from last week, when we were recording on Thursday, just before Trump and Putin talking about damaged people. So this is partly why I think some of the insight of like Dexter and trying to understand people whose brains clearly work in
Very
completely different ways to one's
people,
own,
yeah.
or most people, is quite insightful and interesting, in the ability to be able to dissociate, dehumanize others, and all that kind of thing. So we were recording that before the actual Trump-Putin thing happened in Alaska. I'm wearing my Alaska hoodie from the North Pole in Alaska. And so I was talking a bit at the end of our session about what to expect out of what might happen.
And you thought a repeat of Helsinki.
Yeah. And I think that was probably pretty fair, to be honest. In fact... So, but it was really, and of course, so more has happened. So we're recording this, we should say, late on Wednesday night. So this won't be going out till Friday. So stuff might have happened before Friday. But just as you'd expect to happen when the big event happened in Alaska. And there's this weird thing where Trump kept on talking about going to Russia when he was going to Alaska. Well, no, this is in the lead up when he was talking about all the meeting he was going to have. He kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to Russia to meet Putin." And then
my family in Alaska wouldn't like it so very much. Alaska became Russian, I don't think, despite some of them being Trump voters.
Yeah, indeed. And then when he was there, he talked about, or it was on Air Force One on the way there. He talked about after it's finished, when I come back to America. So there was something really odd going on in his brain, or his understanding of, whether it's Freudian slip, who knows?
Early onset dementia.
Yeah. He met. They literally roll out the red carpet for a murderous dictator.
Yeah.
When he sees Putin come to him, he's giddy with excitement. He's actually clapping with excitement.
Although things didn't seem to have gone very well at the end.
Well, that's at the before as they met. And now it's just worth keeping in mind that Putin is a war criminal. He murders journalists. He murders opposition,
business
folks.
Right?
Yeah, he is a
evil man,
deeply evil, cruel, wicked man.
Yeah, he's been murdering people in Ukraine. He's stolen thousands of Ukrainian children away from there.
20,000 at least Ukrainian children have been kidnapped and taken away, and that's where the International Criminal Court, their case against him is around the children, and Trump welcomes him in warmly. They were supposed to have a number of meetings, so there was supposed to be a meeting. There was a lunch meeting, and then another meeting that was supposed to take place after that. Now, only one meeting took place, and apparently it was a disaster. Yeah. Oh, yes, and the other thing is this has all happened normally diplomacy, when it takes place, is months and months and months in the planning, and when the principals come together, it's to agree something.
Yes.
Because all the work has been done.
All the background work has already been done.
So the agreement is already made. So this was completely... But why was it being driven? It was being driven because Trump was talking about tariffs on India that would affect Russia. And so Putin then offers to meet with Trump, and so give him this face-to-face meeting. So Putin, have you heard any of the kind of discussion about what transpired in there, where apparently Trump just rabbited on and on and on and on, and then eventually it was Marco Rubio. So this was the thing that was different to Helsinki, and where I got it wrong in that he wasn't on his own with Putin. So there were,
except for in the ride over, right?
Yeah,
they were
in the car, Beast, in the car on the way over. But Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff were there. On the Russian side, it was Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, and then one other assistant to, or a strategist for Putin there, and then interpreters that were present. So apparently Witkoff and Rubio were trying to get Trump on track and so they brought up about the ceasefire. And remember that Europe had been
saying we have to have a ceasefire.
Yeah, in the days before. Yeah. So they had gone to meet with Trump to try and get him solid in his mind that this is what I'm looking for, is a ceasefire out of, because they all know that his natural desire is to side with Putin. Mm-hmm. He is, and this is where we're in really weird territory, where the American administration is the enemy. Yeah. And yet you've got to work with them and try to. So the Europe had been there trying to get Trump on side. He immediately apparently caved, and so Putin said, "Nope, no ceasefire." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, we don't really need a ceasefire anyway."
Yeah, why anyone thinks that you're going to get anything reasonable from Putin and Trump, it just blows my mind that anyone thought that was going to work out well.
Indeed.
I mean,
so then the meeting comes to, and this kind of 3-hour meeting comes to an end with nothing. Yeah. I mean, nothing out of it other than
to legitimize Putin.
Legitimizing Putin, and that Putin's maximalist demands that wanting Ukraine to give more territory
than Russia's been able to take. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, and so Putin, in laying that down and not getting any pushback from Trump, it became the de facto deal.
Which is completely unacceptable to either Europe or Ukraine, right? You can't you're just going to... It's like the Anschluss,
So where there's so then what should have happened, as I said, there should have been 2 other meetings. Those didn't happen. There was the press conference that wasn't a press conference.
Yeah, because they didn't take.
There were no
questions.
No questions, and then that absolute change to protocol where usually the host speaks first. No, Putin spoke first and spoke for like 3/4 of the time, giving this whole potted fake history lesson, and then at the end of that, Trump gives a few words and goes off about Russia, and blah blah blah. His usual absolute rubbish.
Greatest hits,
Yeah, but he looked defeated, Trump.
But he always does around Putin. He always looks kind of...
Yeah, but nobody didn't before. You see, he was giddy with excitement going into that meeting.
But of course, after the Helsinki thing, he just looked very kind of beta, didn't he? I mean, I always feel like after he speaks with Putin, he always looks like...
Because Putin has something over him, for sure. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Who knows?
So then they part ways, and then Trump calls the Zelenskyy and the other European leaders, and clearly what he tells them so scares the crap out of them that they all rush to DC. I mean, you imagine all these people trying to clear their diaries to get. I mean, these are folks who have got busy diaries, but they all make it there. But after what you saw
as well, back in February, March, when Zelenskyy was ambushed
in February,
by Trump and Vance in the White House, and.
Yeah, so there's something about them wanting to support Zelenskyy.
But then obviously something happened,
because Trump is just so easily swayed by those. So once he'd met with Putin again, he'd clearly completely backtracked on everything, he would say. And so then you saw on Monday these unbelievable scenes of the Zelenskyy and European leaders having to bow and scrape in order to satisfy the ego of Trump to try and get him back on side again in the talking about having security provisions. Now, of course, those security are worth nothing if Putin is involved in them.
Yeah.
It's not worth anything. So I don't think anything good has come out of this. I mean, the only thing, it's good that these European leaders rallied around Zelenskyy.
Glad they all came.
And they came to help defend his position and what he was doing. Of course, America's not going to be funding anything that's going on in Ukraine from now on, and it is clear in my mind that Trump desperately wants to just give Ukraine to
of course
to
he
Putin.
does. I mean,
that's
of course
what
he
he
does.
wants to do.
Yeah.
And the sight of the European leaders having to massage this toddler into some kind of realism for the
story of America's
reality
life.
of the politics in Europe is. I'm just left speechless by it. It's unbelievable, and this is America. It's the
embarrassing as an American.
It is truly terrifying. So, I don't know really where that leads for Zelenskyy. I feel terrible for him, and so much of the American media has been just focused on what he was wearing, instead of the unbelievable stupid games that are going on, and the life and death implications of what is happening. And that's where maybe that connection to Dexter of trying to get into the head of. So the other thing was, in the middle of the meeting that Trump was having with the European leaders and Zelenskyy,
I saw
he
that.
goes out to call Putin. And he's on the phone with Putin for 45 minutes.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Now, that is not just a call to say, by the way, this is what is being said. That is Putin clearly
giving Donald Trump his marching orders.
Yeah, telling him, well, this is... Yeah. And so that's where you do wonder if a huge part of the entourage that came with Russia were business folks. And Trump brought business folks to Alaska to talk. And I wonder if he was frustrated. If he was frustrated by not being just able to have that meeting with Putin on his own in Alaska because Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff were there. So he wasn't able to talk about the things that he maybe wanted to talk about, which would be enriching himself, as Putin has done. And he wants to, how did you do it? How can we stitch this up together? How can we stitch up Ukraine together? And so then he was on the phone for 45 minutes like, right, this is what they're now saying. They've put me in this position. What am I going to say here? I mean...
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking was there was the clip where Ursula
von der Leyen
was talking about the Ukrainian children. And then wanting to get them back, and then
this is a really important first thing that we need to do is get the children back to their parents.
And then Trump just goes off about
and next thing.
And he starts talking about
the trade deals.
Yeah.
He said, and I did a great trade deal with you.
And you're like, oh my goodness.
It's all about money, power.
And the thing is, we know that he doesn't care about anyone other than himself, but to see it so blatantly, you can't even pretend to care about these 20,000 children who have been kidnapped from their families and taken into Russia. I mean, surely you can pretend to care about that, at least on some kind of level, but there wasn't even any pretense. And
there isn't. If you think back to the Epstein stuff, there has not been a single time I have seen him say anything that would be about the victims and saying, gosh. I'm so sorry for that. It's all about
because we know
his own position and those that he was friendly with. All right, more on Christian nationalism next week.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye.